What's up, everybody? Welcome to News, Games, and More, IGN's daily live news show. I'm Damon Hatfield. I'll be your guide for today. I'm joined by Sydney Goodman.
Hi.
And Janet Garcia.
What's up?
And Zach Ryan.
Greetings and salutations, my friends.
And we were all just talking about what a nice day it is where we live, and we hope it's a super nice day wherever you are. We've got lots to talk about today, lots of PlayStation news, both PS5 and PS4, lots of Ghosts of Tsushima stuff to get through. But first, what's everybody up to after this? Want to hang out and watch a Star Wars? Again, I'm making all of this up. Watch from Home Theater is live at 5 p.m. Pacific tonight, celebrating the 15th anniversary of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. They've got special guests Ashley Eckstein, who is the voice of Ahsoka Tano on the Clone Wars, and Cameron Monaghan, who is Cal Kestis in Jedi Fallen Order. So sync up your copies of Revenge of the Sith with Watch from Home Theater. Be sure to leave your questions for Ashley and Cameron using the hashtag WFHTheater, and they'll get to as many as they can on the air. That's immediately following this show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into the news today. PlayStation 5 games. Everybody wants to know what they're going to be able to play on their PlayStation 5 later this year, and these games will be announced soon. We don't have the games for you today, but it won't be very long to wait. Sony's CEO Kenichiro Yoshida said the company will be announcing a strong lineup of games for PlayStation 5, quote, soon. Now, there has been some speculation about a PS5 event taking place in June. Many have taken today's statement to support that, although Sony has made no further comment. In a statement today, Sony also said the launch of PlayStation 5, scheduled for the holiday season of this calendar year, will deliver even more immersive experiences on a game console. Higher speed, enhanced sensory perceptions generated by its revolutionary controller, and sound delivered in 3D audio will combine to realize truly next-generation console game experiences unlike anything before. Zach, are you ready for that?
Yes, I'm quite ready, I think. I think it's funny that at this point, everybody is so hungry for PlayStation 5 information that the idea that they will announce some games soon is like, here it comes! You know, I think we can all agree that June is in fact soon, so that might line up with the theory of a June event. But yeah, I mean, at this point, like, Sony's got to start talking about their system, man. Like, they got to start putting some stuff out there, or else they're going to get their lunch at 8. Like, I'm like pretty confident that I've been a PlayStation fan for the last few generations, and you know, as far as I know, PlayStation 5 is going to be a day one thing for me, but even I'm kind of desperate to hear more about what that system actually does, what those games look like, et cetera.
Yeah. We talk about PS5 almost every week on the show, but Sydney, I'd like to hear from you. How are you feeling about PlayStation 5 these days versus Xbox Series X? Which one has you more excited?
I mean, Xbox, because I'm a Halo person, and I'm just excited to see, and hopefully they'll deliver on Infinite. But this actually was the first generation that I really got into PlayStation. I had an original PlayStation when I was a kid, but by that I mean my dad had one, and then after that I didn't have one until PS4. And even the PS4 I got pretty late in the generation. But I'm really liking it. Oh no, that's not true. I had a PSP. Which PSPs were so great. Yeah. I loved my PSP, except for I've always had a hard time with the UI. I don't know if like natural-born PlayStation users get it more than I do, but I just don't understand how to do anything on it, including now and when I have my PSP. Thank you. So it is awful.
You don't like the crossbar?
They like it. It's like you just go back and forth and up and down. There's all these little like different avenues to go through. Like, I find it very unintuitive.
Exactly. It's unintuitive. So like sometimes I have to double press the PlayStation button on the controller, and then other times I press the like start button thing, and then it pushes the menu out, and then sometimes you hold the little pad in the middle. Like, I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. Regardless, I am excited for PS5. I'm curious if they will wait until after Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us is out to start talking about next gen. And now my whole face is on here, but that was the end of my sentence. So
I think that's too late. Like, I think that if they wait until after July 17th to start talking about the PlayStation 5, like, I think that's way too late, because I feel like we'll already know so much more about Microsoft by then. I don't know. It just seems too late to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, if the rumors are true that they have an early June PlayStation 5 event planned, that would be before both Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima. I don't know, Janet. What seems more likely to you? Before those games are out, or are they going to wait till afterwards?
Oh man, I'm torn. I'd say it makes more sense to do before, but nothing so far in the marketing has made sense. So I'm going to vote after, just because everything's been sort of out of whack. Like, I think all of us have expected to know more by this point, and the longer time goes on, and the longer we don't have more information, the kind of more askew everything gets. So I could see them definitely holding on to some stuff even that late into it, because they've already held everything so close to the chest. I definitely am more interested in, I'm going to get both of the consoles, but I'm more interested in the Series X because I just have gotten really into Game Pass this gen, and they've shown way more. But at the same time, I'm kind of living for like the PS5 drama. Like, when will we know more? What are they showing? What's going on with it? Just that alone is intriguing, and I feel like a lot of people are in that boat. So I love what a mess this has been, because it's just like, what's going to happen? Everything's up in the air. I kind of live for that, because maybe I'm just, broken, but I love seeing that pan out, and everyone just kind of thirsting for news and just waiting for when they are going to do that eventual huge drop of information. Or if they ever will, maybe it will just be a slow trickle the whole time.
Real quick on a technical note before we continue, Alexio is our producer behind the scenes. Apparently my audio is only coming through the left channel, which is something we experienced with the interviews that we were recording earlier today, but they were able to fix it. So just as a heads up, I'm not sure what the fix is, but just so you're aware, Alexio. All right, PlayStation. Go ahead, Zach.
I was going to say the fix is a daily news show on IGN.com. You can watch it every day.
Yeah. There you go. Hosted by Sydney
It's also
Goodman.
on Snapchat.
That's right. It is also on Snapchat. You're right.
Okay, so PS5 games are going to be announced soon. We know that Microsoft's going to have Halo Infinite for the launch of the Xbox Series X. What do we imagine Sony will try to have at launch for PlayStation 5? Zach, any idea? What would be their big first-party exclusive?
I actually have a pretty good suggestion for this, and I feel like this is kind of a softball, but I'm assuming that we will see Spider-Man Definitive Edition as a launch title for the PlayStation 5. I think the idea of repackaging that game with all of the DLC and maybe some new content, but taking advantage of the PS5's load times, they used that game as a tech demo for early PS5 builds, specifically showcasing faster load times and things like that. I bet you that we see a Spider-Man Definitive Edition for day one.
That's
not the most exciting,
I thought about that.
Announcement, but yeah, I bet you that's there.
Does anybody feel like a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn is likely?
That's what I was thinking. I mean, I have nothing to say because I started playing that game and it just isn't my kind of game. But I know a lot of people would be really, really excited for a sequel, and I think it's been just long enough that it would make a lot of sense for that to be a driving force as a launch title. But what I do love about this every time we go into a new generation is that I think it gives a really great opportunity for new IP to shine. Because I think it's so easy when we're kind of in the thick of things, people are excited about the next Call of Duty, people are excited about the next installment of whatever franchise that you're emotionally attached to or that you enjoy playing. And these generational breaks, I think, are really, really great time to get a look at new IP and have them succeed in like a really new way or really good way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm trying to think what the biggest new IP of this generation would be.
Of the PlayStation 4 generation?
Yeah.
I think Horizon's probably a safe bet there.
Yeah,
I think Sony's especially leaned into Aloy and that world for a lot of their marketing stuff. We saw her kind of front and center in the new Sony Studios sizzle reel that looked like that Marvel opening. I think in terms of who they want to put forward as kind of the flagship, it would be new IPs. It would be Horizon for sure.
Yeah,
although I
they
wish
tried a couple others.
Yeah, I wish that it was Bloodborne. I wish that they would, show some kind of Bloodborne 2 situation. But yeah.
Yeah, some people mentioning Bloodborne as well in chat, or like even stuff like a new Twisted Metal. I feel like you would want like something with mass appeal and that looks really beautiful to show off the new technology, which is why Horizon as a sequel does make a lot of sense at launch. But at the same time, I'm just not sure if that game is just going to come out in that time frame, and without us also already knowing about it. Like, I'm a little hesitant of that being a thing, but I think that makes the most sense because it's something that people already like. It's a big flagship of their studio, and also it looks really pretty, and it has, and especially too with the DualSense having that extra like haptic feedback, and they were talking about pulling bows, so it feels like that would be a good game to highlight the new technology on their new console.
Yeah, those are all really good points. Speaking of the new controller, and from Sony's comments today, I'm talking about higher speed, enhanced sensory perceptions generated by its revolutionary controller. We also have some developers making comments about the new controller today and actually feeling pretty positive about it. This is developer Mike Bithell, who made the recent John Wick Hex and Thomas Was Alone. He's revealed that he's had demos of the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller, and he's been talking up the haptic feedback capabilities. He's speaking on a recent episode of the Play, Watch, and Listen podcast, where another guest, composer Austin Wintry, was discussing the new audio systems promised by Unreal Engine 5, and more particularly PS5's Tempest engine, which will reportedly allow the console to simulate the sound of individual raindrops in a storm. And I don't really know what to make of that. Because when you're listening to a storm, it's just the sound of hundreds of thousands of water droplets hitting the ground at the same time. Zach, what do you guess he means by hearing the sound of individual raindrops?
Well, I don't know about you, Damon, but one of my favorite pastimes is trying to pick out my favorite individual raindrop in the middle of any storm. So maybe he's talking about some sort of play mechanic where you got to find one specific raindrop that holds the secret to what you do next, or something like that. Also, it should be noted that Play, Watch, Listen, that's our friend Alana Pierce's podcast.
Yeah, I just didn't know what to make of that comment. But then Bithell followed up today to say, you're going to love what they're doing with the controller on PS5 as well, with the DualSense stuff, haptic, the raindrops thing. I've had some demos. They're very good. You're going to have some fun and games with that, which is exactly what the DualSense controller is designed for, fun and games.
I do think that haptic feedback is pretty necessary in this generation. I think Nintendo's kind of nailed it on haptic feedback. So I'm excited to see what it is there. But Sony's been talking a lot specifically about the audio capabilities of the PS5. And, as an audiophile myself, there's some really interesting stuff there. I am interested to see what exactly entails and how they use that dynamically. Individual raindrops, I feel like, is a very specific example that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. Is it because when you think about the sound of a storm, I'm sure that it probably just simulates a pattern, and so it won't be as much of a pattern, I guess. It'll be more random. That's the only. I'm really stuck on understanding what this means.
Well, there's also different kinds of rain. There's city rain, and if you have those little sleepy sound apps where you can get the different calming noise. So maybe it just means more capturing the nuance of how rain sounds different based on where you are in a world or in a city or in an area. The first thing that came to mind with this was Detroit Become Human. That a lot of games have rain in them, but that's one of the scenes that I remember really vividly. One thing I really hope they do in terms of making audio more dynamic is just get a little bit more creative with the internal speaker on the controller versus the audio coming from the TV, because in the PS4 era, I felt like it was a very harsh gap. At one point the sound was just on the TV, and then at one point it was just on your controller, and it felt surprising in a way that was often unpleasant. So I hope they kind of find a way to make that a little bit more nuanced, so that it isn't so harsh in trying to do what it's attempting to do. As far as the Switch and its HD rumble, I think it's been hit or miss. There have been times where I'm like, wow, this is really good or really smart. I think finding the moons with the vibration was cool as kind of you're warmer or colder, but other times it's just extremely loud. Playing Fast RMX, which is one of the indie games that was around the launch window, it was just so loud that it was like a 2008 cell phone vibrating at a desk. I really hope that they come up with something a little bit less severe than that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the HD rumble has been utilized a lot by Nintendo. It seems to be, I don't know, it seems to be like something that they showcased when the Switch was first revealed and first launched, but then it really hasn't added up to much more than a gimmick. But I don't know, Zach, do you feel differently? You seem to think that Nintendo really mastered the HD Rumble and haptic feedback.
I just like the way that it conveys, positioning and, kind of like Janet was describing. Like, I loved it in Super Mario Odyssey, where it's kind of a game of hot and cold. I think that they're just doing interesting stuff, where before I feel like Rumble was kind of binary. It was either rumbling or it wasn't, but this is like, it's much more subtle, or it's much more aggressive, or it's, only off to one side. Like, I like that sense of direction in feedback like that. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I guess it remains to be seen. Hopefully, as Sony decides to start sharing more and more info about the PlayStation 5, eventually we'll get to go hands-on with the DualSense and see. We'll see if we can pick out individual raindrops that are falling in the game. Let's talk about some current gen exclusives that are still coming to PlayStation 4. A special edition PS4 Pro for The Last of Us Part 2 has been revealed. It's launching alongside the game on June 19th. And it shows off, it's sort of embossed with Ellie's tattoo sleeve. And it includes PlayStation 4 Pro with a controller, a Seagate 2TB hard drive, and a wireless headset. And the controller and the hard drive are branded with the logo. And I think that's like the first I've seen a limited edition PS4 controller, a DualShock 4, that has a game's logo on its touchpad. Has anyone else seen that before?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think it's the first time.
Yeah.
It's definitely the first time that I've seen it on a hard drive, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I've never even seen a console.
That they give out at like a demo. You know how sometimes they give out like not coasters, but it's like the equivalent of when they give you like a water bottle with their logo on it. It's like, here, take this hard drive.
They really want you to know that this is The Last of Us 2, like that this is the game it's attached to. Yeah, it's a little bit over the top.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little gaudy for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were saying that. There it is. Good. So we can see it on screen there. Yeah. What do you think about the fact that the console says The Last of Us Part 2 on the front of it? Yeah, I don't. That seems unnecessary, right?
I'm not really a fan.
I don't know, because I feel like the fun of this stuff is like the nuance. At least for me, if I'm gonna buy something special edition, it's just like it's this little sly thing that if you know, you know. Like if I'm gonna purchase this, you would assume that you're gonna put it like on top of your TV console or something so that people can see it, right? And the fact that like The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be like staring at me in my eyeballs when I'm looking at it just like doesn't sound cute.
Yeah.
It just seems
it's also weird because the text is in white, so it's very like predominant. So if you want to show off the design of the console and put your PS4 vertical, which is also just an abomination when you put it vertical, it looks awful. I hate that. But if you want to do it to show it off, the text is on the side, and then if you have it on its flat the way it should be, then you can't really see the top. So that was always kind of the weird thing of limited edition or special edition PS4s to begin with. Like they don't really, because it's such a flat console, it doesn't really display as nicely. I think the controller has the same struggle. The controller is so small, like it's really thin and lightweight, that there's not really enough to fully enjoy the color of the design that they ever put onto it, unlike the Xbox Design Lab stuff where the controller's just fatter, so there's more to like see in it because it's a bigger controller. So that's always been a struggle. They have done labeling like that on the Death Stranding console, and then I think also there was like one other console they did that on, but they didn't do it for Spider-Man, I guess because Spider-Man is already so obviously Spider-Man that they thought that was enough. So I guess they kind of didn't trust the tattoo to be enough of a signifier that's Last of Us, so they felt like they needed to put the title on there. The design, though, the like kind of engraving style of it, I think looks very pretty. So I do like the overall design. I just don't like the fact that it says The Last of Us Part 2 on both the console and the controller. That part's a little bit much, but I think the design itself is very nice.
Yeah, if they would have embossed like The Last of Us Part 2, or if they would have done it in like a black, like a shiny black, I think that they could have gotten away with it, but it just... But I agree. I like the actual design. I just don't like the title. I'm just so not into the title.
It's cool that it comes with a hard drive. I don't know about you guys, but anytime I play a new game on my PS4, the first mini game I play is deciding what I have to delete to make room for the new game.
What's the last thing you deleted on your PS4?
Oh man, it would have been to install Final Fantasy VII. I probably did like Dishonored 2 or something. Man, just
How dare you?
I'm not gonna replay Dishonored 2 anytime soon.
I just deleted Final Fantasy VII to make room for a Dreams update because that game is
Oh,
huge.
wow.
It's like 80 gigabytes. I'm like,
Yeah.
I spent like 60 plus hours in there. I'm not gonna go back, so it's fine. But yeah, I also have that struggle. It is cool that it comes with that. It would be nice if also just next gen came with a lot more storage because we clearly really need it. One thing I was wondering is like, would you guys buy this console so close to the launch of the PS5? Because obviously that's when the game is coming out. So I get that they couldn't like not do that, but it's sort of awkward timing, no?
Yeah. It's interesting. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, that was the first thing that I thought when I saw it was like, this is a PlayStation 4 that is only for people that have been waiting for The Last of Us Part 2. You know, like this is for a very specific crowd that like saw that game announced at PSX in 2016 and was like, okay, well, I guess I know when I'm going to buy a PlayStation 4, and just held out because like I just can't imagine dropping, you know, what is it, $300, $400 on a PS4 Pro. $400, right? So like $400 on a PS4 Pro, like presumably 5 months before the next PlayStation comes out. Unless I did this with the PlayStation 2, but unless you're waiting until the end of the generation and then you just go back and get all those games for cheap, which is actually a pretty good move.
Which is, it's great to get in on a console at the end of its life when it just has this incredible library of affordable games. But it is also true that we're right on the cusp of the next console generation. But what's interesting about this special edition is that they released some official photos of it today. And some of the photos are trademarked 2020, but then others are trademarked 2019. So I think they've had this like ready to go for a long time, but the game was delayed. It was delayed multiple times. So they've probably just been sitting on this for a year now, waiting until they can finally like show it off. And
well, because The Last of Us was originally...
No, go ahead.
The Last of Us was originally supposed to come out in late 2019, correct? Like, wasn't that the initial date? And then they pushed it to February, and then it got further pushed. Yeah. So
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But so, like, couldn't they have just released this, like, earlier? And then when the game came out, you would get it? I just don't understand why they have to wait until July, or I guess June to...
Have they ever done a special edition console where they release it without the game? I feel like
you would get the game.
It's
just then you could actually use the console before it's like obsolete.
Right.
I guess it just depends on if it comes with a physical copy of the game or if it's a download code.
I mean, they can mail it to you.
I don't know which one is. Yeah.
I guess we've decided that like that's not what we do. Like it is kind of an interesting point to bring up, but yeah, it's just not, I guess, the etiquette. So that's basically the only logic behind it. And I guess they want to align maybe that excitement for the console to like add additional excitement for the game. I think that would probably be the other benefit of having them together. But yeah, it does suck that it's so close that who's excited to open up a PS4 right now?
I mean, like I said, if you haven't owned one this whole time, there's an incredible library of games waiting for you. But have any of you ever bought a special edition console? I actually haven't. I always have the vanilla version.
I did. Yeah. The first PlayStation 4 that I owned was the Destiny 1 Ivory White limited edition console because I bought it off of Craigslist from a kid for like $200 because he bought it and then got a bunch of traffic tickets. So he had to sell it to pay his tickets off. And so I came up on it for cheap.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That one's really pretty.
Yeah, it was cool.
Janet,
it was a cool looking console.
You lit up. It looked like you were going to respond.
Oh, not necessarily, but mine is the Switch one. The Animal Crossing Switch and it has the dock that's all like Animal Crossinged out. That's I think the only special one I've gotten, because the weird thing about special edition consoles is unless they're in a series, like, which is one convenient thing about The Last of Us, if they're not in a series, I'm like, do I even know if I'm going to like this game? Am I just gonna be stuck with this? Like the Death Stranding console looked gorgeous. I loved it a lot. Like I thought the white and the black contrast looked really pretty, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to have that console if I don't actually like the game to that level. But you don't know until it comes out, so you kind of end up in a weird position. Like with Animal Crossing, I just did dice roll. It looks so pretty that I just bought it.
It always makes me feel bad to think about those folks it always makes me feel bad to think about those folks that pre-ordered the Death Stranding console and got it all set up in their home entertainment system, whatever, and then had to play Death Stranding. What a bummer. That's unfortunate.
So some people like that game. Let's let them enjoy that game.
But yeah, I've never bought a special edition console. I don't know. No. I think it's because I'm just not okay. I love video games, and I'm a pretty hardcore person when it comes to certain things. But I'm just not hardcore enough to buy a console that's special edition if I already have the console. Like I just
that's totally fair.
I don't even to upgrade to like PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. Like I didn't do that because I have like a console that's working perfectly well. So I don't know. I'm just not that audience, but I agree. Like I'll see cute things. Like when I was really close for the Let's Go Pikachu Switch. That's the closest I've ever gotten. And then once I saw how expensive it was and I saw my Switch that was working fine, I said it's fine.
This is fine. The only special edition console I really wish I had is the PlayStation 20th anniversary PS4, which I think Pear has. And I don't know how you actually got that. Yeah, I don't think it was actually available for sale. I think it was like a promotional thing that Sony gave away to VIPs.
So the only way to get that PlayStation 20th anniversary console was to run a very successful and old video game news website. So it only went out to a few people. Yeah.
It's been a long con. So actually, I'm glad you brought that up though, because I think that we have one of the controllers that was released in tandem with the consoles. And I feel like special edition controllers make more sense to me because not only is it easier to display, but it's a lot more economical. And all of the special edition controllers that we have are super beautiful and I love them. And it's a great way to commemorate games that I love, but it also isn't purchasing an entire new console with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus controller. Yeah, there it is. Oh man, that thing is pretty. Totally wish I had one of those.
That is
pretty. I was thinking of a different one, actually.
I was also thinking of a different one. Now I'm like,
I was thinking of that blue one? That blue, like, kind of
blue one, yeah.
Yeah, right? I'm like, this is awkward. I'm like, I actually don't think that one looks that good. I don't remember, but it was also limited edition, though. I think they had a limited run of
because that's the controller we have, is the really pretty blue one.
I just wanted to quickly shout out Joe Cartwright here in the comments. He says, I want a see-through console. And I desperately want a 90s ass see-through console to make a comeback. I would love it if
the N64 one.
Yeah, or like the Atomic Purple GBA or GBC. I would love it if the PlayStation 5 was announced and they're like, and also you can get it in see-through neon green. I'd be like, sign me up. That sounds great.
The one I was thinking of was the 500 million limited edition PS4 Pro, and it was to commemorate having sold 500 million consoles. And it's blue. It's like a deep blue, and it does have a little bit of that see-through element to it, which I feel like everyone that started gaming in the 90s are just like, this is my aesthetic. Like everyone loves that see-through stuff. It looks so cool.
Yeah, for sure. Another super random tie-in to The Last of Us Part 2 is my hometown brewery in Kansas City, Boulevard Brewing, is branding 6-packs of their Space Camper Cosmic IPA with The Last of Us Part 2. And I think this is just so random and crazy. They're like, this Kansas City beer brewery is aligning with Last of Us Part 2. Zach.
Are they doing it? Are they doing it officially? Is that like a Sony sanctioned thing? They're making The Last of Us, The Last of Us Part Brew.
I know, right?
Oh, they should have done that. They should have done that, dude.
That's also I don't like beer, but we always buy that beer when we have people coming over because people like that beer. So if you like beer, you might like that one. The space one.
Space Camper? That's great, yeah.
Yeah.
But I love Boulevard beer. This is so random that
The Last of
Us. Random Kansas City brewery.
Good.
I would also like to go on the record and put out there that
it's pretty. I like the juicy hop blast. I like it.
Yeah.
Weird.
Man, yeah, I could go for one of those right about now. What was the silly? What kind of beer would Joel and Ellie drink? Janet wants to know what kind of beer. I don't know what beer's left.
Just so you know, Ellie is 19. I don't know if in post-apocalyptic America, if they have drinking ages. I don't know. I'm guessing everyone's just drinking because, right? But also don't drink underage. That's against the law. It's a crime, real crime, not like time crime. It's real crime. But I would say Joel would drink like crummy, cheap American beer. Like he doesn't care what it is. He'll just drink anything, and it kind of prides himself in that. I feel like he's like above drinking craft beer. Like he's too cool to care. And then Ellie, I feel like Ellie would be an IPA person, like maybe I'm projecting because I like hazy IPAs, but like I feel like she'd go with IPAs or maybe like those like unfiltered beers, like something kind of grittier, you know. So yeah, that's my take on that. On that dumb question I posed.
I think that everybody in The Last of Us is drinking like bathtub gin because it's the apocalypse, and what else are you gonna make?
Like homebrewed.
Yeah.
Moonshine.
Moonshine. Wait, okay, I have a follow-up discussion question.
Okay, good.
What's like the most random promotional item released in tandem with a game? Because beer that is Sony sanctioned feels like really, really random. Is there other like food that has been released with game releases? Tied to game releases?
Sam Claiborne in our office has these like ancient Super Mario Galaxy cookies that I think are really funny. Like they're like these rectangle cookies that have the Super Mario Galaxy box art printed on them in sugar frosting, but they're about 100 years old now, and I bet you they're just so awful. Yeah.
I'm sure there's lots of weird ones.
Right. I have a thing of ramen that's on my desk at work. That's a Pikachu one. But I feel like Japan has so many Pokemon-themed snacks. I don't think it was tied to a game. But I'm sure that you probably wouldn't want to eat it because it's very old. But it's so cute. It has Pikachu on it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to another upcoming PlayStation 4 exclusive, Ghosts of Tsushima. We got a nice long look at that game last week with the big gameplay reveal. And then our own Jonathan Dornbush, our own newsboy, Jonathan Dornbush, had an interview with the creative director and art director over there at Sucker Punch and got lots of new details this week. So we now know officially Ghosts of Tsushima will be Sucker Punch's biggest game ever. And I always think this is a little bit amusing when developers come out and say this, because to me it would be much more newsworthy if they were like, yeah, we've spent the last 6 years just making a really small game, much smaller than our last game.
Well,
they're always like, it's our biggest game ever.
It is interesting because you do have Ubisoft and the Assassin's Creed team coming out saying that this Assassin's Creed game will be smaller than the previous ones, right? So I think there is some legitimacy to what you're saying. In terms of Sucker Punch's games, the infamous the last game that they did, the infamous Second Son and First Light, those worlds were pretty big. But I think even now, like looking back at those games, they're very first generation PS4 in terms of the overall size. And I think that just getting more familiar with the architecture and really figuring the insides of a console out like that, it just allows them to create stuff that would obviously be so much bigger than what's come before it.
Yeah. It is.
I think with
what's that?
I think with an emphasis on exploration, you want to be able to create a world where it feels expansive to run across, and you feel like you're discovering all these things that are kind of hidden and tucked away in different nooks and crannies. I think it lends itself to the gameplay.
Yeah, it's interesting that Sucker Punch was there pretty much at launch for the PlayStation 4. It was like 3 or 4 months after the launch of the console, and now they're coming in at the very tail end of the console. It's the last PS4 exclusive that we know of. So it's pretty cool that they're sort of bookending the life of the console, and they're going to be able to utilize everything that we've learned, that developers have learned about making games for the platform. No pressure.
Yeah.
We've also learned that they've they're passing on a morality system. While the themes of honor and dishonor can often be found in samurai-focused media, Sucker Punch is taking a different approach to examining morality than it did in the Infamous franchise. There was a morality meter in Infamous, but it's pretty much like an on-off switch. Either you were good or you're a monster. There wasn't a lot of nuance in there. But they said in our interview, we thought about a morality meter because we had the karma system in Infamous, but we realized it was more important to us that we wanted to tell a human story of someone who is this way and has to evolve into something else versus transform completely into something else. He doesn't flip-flop back and forth. It muddied it up for us. We really wanted the story to reflect his transformation. I don't know, does anyone think they'll miss that morality stuff, or is it unnecessary?
I think that it can be really fun at times. Like, I mean, to be honest, I'm so lame. I always end up just taking the good path because I feel bad being the bad guy. So like, I'm the worst person to take advantage of that. But I know that like it can be fun. However, I think that's good to like know your boundaries and know when it's like this isn't adding to the story. And I think that it gives a good insight that the team working on this clearly knew the story that they want to tell, and that they just didn't think the morality meter was a part of that. I think having those boundaries and knowing when to say no is important.
Yeah.
In all things, not just video games.
I think that morality meters in games typically tend to be too black or too white. You know what I mean? Like there's no real middle ground in terms of like Sid's saying, like you either play as a good guy or you play as a bad guy. I think there are franchises that have done it better, like Mass Effect, allows you to make some interesting choices, and you can kind of walk a line between good and bad. But honestly, I think that the game that has done it the best recently is The Witcher 3, and there is no morality meter in that. Like you just make choices and then the game reacts to those choices that you've made. Like you get different story outcomes based on those choices, and some characters might die or a village might burn down or something like that based on those choices, and it doesn't say whether it's good or bad. It's just something that happened as a result of your actions, and you figure out how you feel about that that result.
Yeah. Janet, how about you? Do you like morality systems in games?
Generally speaking, because I'm not sure how it functioned in like their most recent game, but it depends on how it's done. So if it feels like it's making meaningful changes, it can be interesting, but I really don't like when games have me make decisions that don't amount to anything. That was one of my big issues with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like, so many of those choices didn't actually matter, but then a few of them did, which was weird. So I think it can end up, it gives the player more creativity, but ultimately it either means you have to tell like two distinctive stories, or like one same story that can have two different like angles that are ultimately still kind of the same thing. So overall, I think it can be really fun if it's done well, kind of to echo what Zach said, but it doesn't work for every game. And I think too often games try to incorporate choices just to be like, oh, look, you can decide something, but really you're not deciding anything. You're just like clicking a button, and then it just kind of pushes you along, which I personally don't appreciate when it's done that way. So I'd rather have it be, we're all in on this and decisions are really important, or just remove it entirely and let me play whatever story you're intending for me to experience.
Yeah, we got a couple of people in the comments here that are kind of echoing these sentiments as well. Dan Kia says, almost like Red Dead 2, where you can be honorable or dishonorable. And then our friend Forchi says, narratives in open world games benefit from tracking your actions, but don't necessarily need a meter. And I think we're all kind of in agreement on that.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Damon. Damon has a question.
Well, but what's your question?
Well, mine's really random. I was going to ask about open world games, but if you wanted to stay on this thread, then I'll ask it after we're done.
Well, I had a question for you, Sydney. I just want to know, you were saying earlier that Horizon wasn't your type of game. How are you feeling about Ghost of Tsushima?
So I'm really, really interested in like this period of time, and I'm interested in what they've shown. I think it looks like a beautiful game. And this actually ties into what I was going to ask about though, but I get so overwhelmed by open world games to the point where it's like I'm overwhelmed by choice and I just stop playing. And that's what happened with Horizon Zero Dawn. It was like, this is beautiful, I'm really interested in this, and then I started playing and I was just like, whoa, like I do not have the time necessary to really get what I want to get out of this game, because like it's too big. And I'm kind of afraid that that's what's going to happen with this game, is that it's going to be one of those where I'll put like 6 hours into it and then I'll just kind of be like, I think I'm going to go play something else now. So that goes with my question, which is like, how big do you think is too big?
Zach, you want to
Is
answer
there
that
too
one?
big?
Well, I don't know. I'm not maybe not the best person to answer that question because I've never ever been a completionist, and especially when it comes to open world games, I always take the same path in that like I start by playing sort of ad hoc, right? Like I'll do a story mission and then something will catch my eye and I'll do a side quest or I'll go over here and explore this thing, and that pattern kind of repeats itself for 30 odd hours, and then I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm tired of playing this game, I just want to finish it, and then I'll just storm through the rest of the story missions to the end. So that's how I play every open world game. I feel like I get to a certain point, I'm like, okay, I've had enough of this game, I'm going to move on. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at on it. Mm-hmm.
I think I play very similarly to Zach. But Janet, how about you? Do you like open world games?
It depends on the game. Honestly, I would say like probably the open world game I've enjoyed the most is probably Breath of the Wild, because it's also one of those games that I've played. I think what works in that game is that it does a good job balancing space. I think when an open world game feels too big is when I'm kind of mindlessly traveling about and I don't really have a good sense of direction through the narrative or through like what I'm interested in doing. And what made Breath of the Wild work to me and what makes an open game world work is when there's something that's threading me through that allows me, kind of like Zach said, to see things on the side that are interesting to me. I also really like when games kind of make very clear parameters for what you need to do, like the more critical path versus what you don't need to do versus like what you secretly need to do. I think one thing I don't like in open world games is sometimes they act like you have this freedom, but the reality is you're not going to make it if you don't do X, Y, and Z. So I like when they make those tiers clear. Like with Breath of the Wild, the main storyline is very clear. Like you go and you defeat Ganon. You can do that basically immediately. But they like highly recommend you do the Divine Beast because you get like these extra benefits from doing so. And they're not hyper clear that you should do them, but it's pretty straightforward that you should, versus like the shrines, that's a lot more granular. And okay, well, if you want certain abilities or certain upgrades, you can do these other side things. I think it tiers that very clearly for the player. And I feel like sometimes in open world games that tiering is not made clear, and then it does become overwhelming because you feel like, well, I don't know, can I go back? Will I get locked out? Well, do I secretly actually need to do these things that you're not telling me I need to do? But then I realize I'm not strong enough to do this other quest. So I think that comes into play. And then also, like, depending on what kind of tool set they give the players to manage it. So the short answer is I don't think that there's such a thing as too big of an open world, generally speaking, like edge to edge of the map. But I think there is maybe a problem with spacing, like if areas of interest are too far out and it's very hard to navigate.
Sure.
Like when I think about Red Dead 2 is that you could kind of just, well, before the fast travel, you could kind of put yourself on a lined path and go there from like your camp to town, and maybe something happens along the way, maybe it doesn't. And it facilitated that really well, versus if they're just like, go out and be like, I think like Days Gone's open world had some of those issues, even though it wasn't exactly an open world game, but like there was a lot of kind of nothingness, and it didn't really drive me through. And it kind of just felt like it was there to be there instead of being there for a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I would also like to echo that Breath of the Wild is an amazing game, and if you guys want to just talk about Breath of the Wild for the next 20 minutes, I'm down with that too. So,
yeah, every fairly often I always think I should restart Breath of the Wild.
I've played that game probably 6 times all the way through. It is.
I have never actually fully finished it. I'm still not done.
Never
with
beat Ganon?
Like,
wow.
No, I'm like 100
game.
hours in though, but I just haven't finished it. And now I don't know when to go back or what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll just do it today. But yeah, so that's like a weird. It's like the game I've put the most hours into, but have not actually finished, because like the world was just so compelling and there's a lot going on. And then I don't know, it just kind of took a long time, and then I put it down, and then I just never picked it back up. But yeah, Ghost of Tsushima looks interesting. I like the duality they have going on with the combat too, because I'm more of a stealth person until I fail, and then I just start whacking people. Yeah. So I hope that it lends itself to jank stealth, as I call it. I'm a little worried I won't be able to get away with jank stealth in this game, so we'll see.
I also wanted to shout out Huey New in the comments here. He says, I like small open worlds like the Arkham games, and I think that's another really interesting way to do an open world game. You know, like you have a smaller, more compact area with more objectives, more things to do. That's a really interesting thing that I think those games have nailed a little bit better than a lot of other open world games.
the original comment I made about how I think it's funny when developers say their latest game is their biggest ever. Someone replied to me on Twitter earlier today saying that someone should make an Ant-Man game where the whole world is just a living room, but it's both the smallest open world and the biggest open world at the same time.
That's great.
I thought that was
very
pretty
good.
clever. Real quick, before we bounce off Ghosts of Tsushima, Zach, how are you feeling about this game now that we've seen a big gameplay demo?
Well, I mean,
Is this your kind of game?
Full disclosure, like one of my best friends works on that game, so take everything that I have to say with a grain of salt there. But like, even if Andrew didn't work on that game, I would still be very, very excited. It is a first-party Sony game, which I'm always there for. It is an action stealth game in an open world, which is like directly marketing straight to my gamer brain. Like, yeah, I think that Ghost of Tsushima looks phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it too. But now let's talk about Overwatch, a game that is 4 years old, apparently today. I think it's 4 years old today. And the occasion of it turning 4 and the release of its final hero, IGN re-reviewed Overwatch just today. Gave it a 10. A 10 out of 10. Who are our people that play Overwatch? I know Zach does. Sydney?
I played Overwatch in like early Overwatch, but I haven't touched it for a year or so. I'm like relatively, I jump in and out of the competitive circuit in terms of watching Overwatch League though.
And then Janet, any Overwatch for you?
Just a little bit at the beginning, because it was such a big deal when it came out that I'm like, if I don't play this, I'm going to have nothing to talk to people about. So, yeah, and I found it was my first game, I think, of that genre, and I found it to be definitely pretty accessible, but definitely not as accessible as people made it for like a newcomer if you didn't know the genre. Like, it took me a while to kind of get my footing, but once I did, I think it has like a good, set of characters to choose from. Even if you don't really know what you're doing, you can kind of just like slug along, which is basically what I did for a couple hours here and there at launch.
Yeah.
Would anyone say that Overwatch popularized hero shooters? Because I was thinking back if there was any hero shooters that I played before Overwatch, and I think it was Overwatch, but it was only 4 years ago.
I think that Overwatch was definitely not the first hero shooter, but I think it is the game that put hero shooters on the map and put even that vernacular into our vocabulary there. Like, hero shooter just wasn't a thing that we really discussed a ton before Overwatch. I think that they kind of perfected that recipe,
Well, yeah. So there was Team Fortress, right?
Yeah.
But that was quite a long time ago. Like, there's a good number of years in between Team Fortress and Overwatch. I don't know. A reviewer today who re-reviewed it said that Overwatch has evolved into a multiplayer shooter that remains at the top of the class. Zach, you said you've been playing some Overwatch recently. Would you agree that Overwatch is just one of the best first-person shooters available today?
Yeah, I think that, like Janet and Sid, I played just kind of an unholy amount when that game launched in 2016, and I've dropped off and come back a number of times over the years to check out new characters, new maps, things like that. And I think that Blizzard is a company that their continual updates, their continual like re-examining of their games, the way that they go back in and tweak the balances and things like that. And people in the comments will say things like, "Oh, the game is terribly balanced," etc. Like, sure. If that's the way you feel about it, that's totally fine. But I think that the developers' commitment to their game as a platform and the amount of content and the amount of consumer feedback that they've listened to and gone back in and adjusted that game, like it is a masterpiece game in the way that you can pick up a controller and play that game today for the first time and still fit in on a team. Whether that be as a healer, as a tank, there's so many options for newcomers. But then when you play with a team like Simon, who did our review, I've jumped into matches with him. He's got a squad that they play every weekend. And when you jump in with a team that is like a well-oiled machine like that, it is a sight to behold. Like, it is genuinely, it'll blow your hair back, like how fun it is and how like stressful it is. And like, yeah, I mean, I do think it's a masterpiece game. He's catching a lot of heat on social for calling it a masterpiece. And honestly, I think those people that are out there saying that like aren't seeing it for the bigger picture, like aren't taking into consideration just how much blood, sweat, and tears have been devoted to making this game what it is today.
Yeah.
Well, not just that, but sorry, go ahead, Damon.
No, you first.
Well, I was going to say, just listening to you talk about it, Zach, and kind of going over it in my head, the foundation that Overwatch set for first-person shooters now, I think is really easy to forget. Again, we talked about already that they popularized hero shooters, but even how they rolled out like the cinematics for their characters, and you look at games like Rainbow Six Siege and even Valorant, that I think borrows a lot of things that Overwatch laid the foundation on. And so whether or not you still play Overwatch and whether or not you like Overwatch, like I'm going to go out and say it, I don't particularly have a lot of fun playing Overwatch, which is why I don't play it anymore. But I still respect it, and I can totally see it as being a 10, and I can see calling it a masterpiece because I think that it did a lot for the genre, and it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, I think that's all true. I mean, I'd almost forgotten that we'd given Overwatch Game of the Year that year in 2016. So it was beating out Uncharted 4. Yeah,
like that was like all anyone. Stardew Valley. Yeah, that was like all anyone was talking about that year. It was so like it just permeated everything. I mean, that's why I played it. Like that's not my genre at all, but I just felt like it was such like a cultural phenomenon. And I think that's what people kind of try to dismiss when like a lot of people get angry, and a few people in the comments are like this right now too, where they're like, oh, Team Fortress, like what, how can you not say that that's the originator and blah blah. But it's like that, you know, that Jay-Z line, you made it a hot line, I made it a hot song. Like it's not always who's the first to do it, it's who makes it into like the cultural zeitgeist, and that's what Overwatch was for that genre and still is. So yeah, I kind of echo Sid, like I don't play it like that because it's just not my type. For me, it's not even my type of game, but I can totally, it doesn't shock me that it's 10. Like the closest thing to surprise is just that, you know, we take 10s very seriously, so that just means that it's, you know, very like high esteemed to our reviewer, and that they like really appreciate it for everything that it does for the genre and also just the game itself.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our last couple of news stories of the day. 2K finally made it official and announced the Mafia trilogy, sort of a repackaging and in some cases remastering and remaking the 3 Mafia games, Mafia 1, 2, and 3. But the way they're rolling these out is super weird. I don't know if you guys caught this today. The Mafia trilogy is available today, but Mafia 1 you won't be able to play until August. And Mafia 1 is the one that they're remaking. So like they said the trilogy's out now, but you can only get 2 and 3 today, and 1 will be coming later. And I just thought that was really like, what? Why not just wait until they're all ready?
Maybe this is now the official order that you should play the games in. Like it's like the machete order of this franchise.
I think it kind of makes sense to me because you know, the lift on Mafia 1 is a bigger lift. Like it's just going to take more to remake that game and plus it up. To your point about waiting, I think 2K has always been really good about positioning their games in a time frame where they can succeed, and like having buy-in now when there's a kind of a lull between The Last of Us and between Animal Crossing, Final Fantasy VII, Doom, etc., and The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, whatever's coming behind that. Like I think it's smart to be putting out a remake now that's like, well, hey, these have been sort of AA games previously. If you missed them before, here's an opportunity to do that. And then in August, you'll get another chance to dip back into the first one. Like it's fun.
Huh. I mean, you've almost convinced me, but I'm kind of with Damon that when I read the release this morning, I had to reread it because I was kind of confused. And then I think I was also a little bit confused because, and I might have misread this, but I thought it said something about like, if you own Mafia 2 and 3, then like do you automatically get upgraded to the definitive edition? I could have sworn I read that and I just didn't really understand. Like, so you're just giving it for free if you already have the game? But the games are really old.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Sydney. It may just be Mafia 3, because that's the only one from this generation, that if you already own Mafia 3, it'll upgrade it to the definitive edition, which just means it has all the DLC. They haven't, like, remastered Mafia 3 anyway.
Yeah, I guess, which is nice. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's great. Fantastic. But it just, the whole thing, and I think even how they did the teaser was, like, very confusing. Everything around this has been very confusing for me, but I guess the game will be out eventually and you can play it when it's out.
Yeah. It's cool that they're remaking the first one. I've actually never played any of these games. Has anyone else?
Yeah, I played Mafia 3. Mafia 3 is a really interesting game in that the game itself is just okay, but some of the mechanics therein, like some of the especially the stuff that you can do with like the story and your Mafia members is really really cool. 1 and 2 I never played because those were mostly PC focused games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played
I
a
was
little
always
bit of
aware
3.
of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's interesting
And then,
because
do
I've
you
always
agree
heard
with-
that 1 was the best. But I never played. I didn't play any of them. But I've heard that
Right.
1 is like the one to play.
Yeah. Well, now's our chance. Well, not now. August. August is our chance.
But if you wanted to play 2
Feels
and 3,
like now,
it's available now. And if you own it, then
Yeah.
you can upgrade now for free. So, really
Yeah.
clear directions.
Now is our chance for some. August is a chance for others.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep. Okay. It's clear now.
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Okay. Apparently, also today is this you, Janet, that added this? Today is The Witcher 3's 5th anniversary. The Witcher 3 is 5 years old today.
Yep.
Wow. Because yesterday it was Red Dead Redemption was 10 years old.
That's crazy.
Today is Witcher 3.
Shout out.
Are you sure? It's actually May 19th.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Today is also a year from Grand Theft Auto, GOT, what is it? Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Ending. Lots of
No,
things happening. on May
it was in May.
19th. I'm
Game
okay.
of Thrones
Yeah.
ended in May.
Yeah.
That's right.
What?
Shorter
That
season.
feels crazy to me. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
It's a
Yeah.
big reminiscing
Oh.
season, basically, what it is.
Okay. Do you guys remember how good Witcher 3 was and how bad the end of Game of Thrones was?
Well, I'll tell you this much right now. This is a good metric for this. This morning, the way that the social team usually works is when early when I get online, like 8:00, we start dropping in stories that we want to cover. And so the first 2 stories that I dropped in were the Witcher 3 anniversary and the Game of Thrones anniversary. Now, which of those 2 stories do you think we decided to cover on social?
Oh, I mean, both of those would have been good choices. I would think.
The Witcher
Game
3
of
is the
Thrones.
only choice. The Witcher 3.
Oh.
Game of
But
Thrones.
people love to hate. People love to hate on Game of Thrones.
That's what I thought it was that everybody would be
Yeah.
sad and upset.
I guess this
Yeah.
is why we don't have that job then.
Right?
No, look, you're talking about The Witcher 3, which is arguably the best game of this generation, and then Game of Thrones, which is definitely a show that had a finale. So, I mean, it's 6 and 1
A
half.
show. At one point, Game of Thrones was arguably, the best TV show in a long time.
Right,
But,
which makes that fall so much worse. So,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it's really, really bad.
mhm.
Has everybody here played The Witcher 3?
Hell
No.
yeah.
No, oh, that's right. It's another open world game.
I don't really. Yeah, it was. I don't really like fantasy games, which is so funny because I love fantasy film and like books and universes. But when it comes to games, I just could not care less. I don't know why. I do think I know why, which is because the games that I grew up playing weren't fantasy games, and so now when I try and play them, there's just. I appreciate The Witcher, and I appreciate how much everybody loves it, and that I can't say, how do you say his name? Geralt.
Garrett.
I don't know how to say his name. And every time there's a Witcher story for Daily Fix, I say his name a different way every time I have to say it, and I always try to just change it into pronouns, and then the comments just yell at me for not saying his name correctly and being like, this girl hasn't played The Witcher before. And I'm like, I am very open about never playing The Witcher. I do not know how to say this man's name. Why is it so confusing? So no, I have not played The Witcher.
There's a guy in the chat right now. I assume there's a person in the chat that every time somebody has mentioned on this show that they haven't played this game or this game has popped in and said fake gamers. And to that person, I say, like, have you played every game? Is that something that you spend every waking moment of your life doing, playing all 500 video games that get released every year? Like, come on. Like, that's ridiculous. Just because you don't play one game, I mean, he might. That's very well could be, but like, just because you don't play one game doesn't mean you're any less of a gamer. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is pretty dumb. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that just about brings us to the end of our time together today. Alexio, sorry we didn't get to that hot game trailer. We'll try that again another time. Just remind everybody. I know. Sorry, Alexio. Coming up right after this is Watch from Home Theater. We're watching Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith with the voice of Ahsoka Tano and the voice of Cal Kestis from Jedi Fallen Order. So sync up your copies of Revenge of the Sith. Get ready to watch some Star Wars with us right after this. Thank you very much to Sydney and Janet and Zach. Thank you, Alexio. Everybody have a great night, and we will see you next time on News, Games, and More, right here on IGN.
Bye.